Welcome to the Heartful Healing Hub podcast. I am Deanne, your host, frequency intuitive and energetic healing guide, here to hold space for transformation through sound, energy, and sacred storytelling. You're listening to Healed and Whole Stories of Remembering, a special series where I sit with women who've walked through deep health challenges and emerged transformed. These are conversations that are sacred, heart to heart, soul to soul, filled with truth, resilience, and the power of coming home to yourself. May these conversations inspire your own inner healer to awaken. Let's begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my podcast. And today I have the pleasure of sitting here with Mattie. I will pull up her bio so I can properly introduce her. Mattie is a body reset guide for busy ladies. So her journey began when she realized how much stress her own body had been holding, something she hadn't even been aware of for years. Today, she is helping high capacity women who are used to pushing through understand what's happening in their body and how to finally release that tension. Through her work, women experience a level of ease and resilience they didn't even know was possible. Welcome, Mattie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. So the stage is yours. Whatever you wish that or you feel like you want to share with us, if you have a story or what it is that you're doing, up
Sure.
to
Yeah.
you.
So I do have a story. I kind of fell into this work when I was in college, just by working for somebody who offered free sessions, and that's when I began to realize kind of how much your body stores. And I was so noticed changes within my body so quickly. So for 20 plus years, I've continued that because I knew what a difference it made. Um, but where I really found it made such a huge difference in the state that I was in was when a couple of years ago I found out that my husband had pretty much used his entire retirement into into a business that we then had to close the doors on,
Oh,
which of course I wasn't aware of.
oh dear.
So um yeah, so it was we'd owned a restaurant, and which he kind of took care of and did the running because we had kids at home, which is totally fine. But when I and I would check in and I would just ask, like, how are things going, and everything was always, oh, it's fine, and so when I found out about this, I was just completely shocked, because uh first of all, it was not he we were already personally, we're in a financially difficult position, partly because of other stuff he'd done from the restaurant without me knowing, and then also then the loss of all of our retirement. So it was like, it was just such a, you could call it a tower moment, right? Kind of where everything comes crumbling down.
Mm-hmm.
Which I laugh, but it wasn't, it's definitely not a laughing moment. So it just complete devastation. Think about,
Yeah.
um, and so of course, after that happened, I was just a couple of days, I was like, I just didn't know what to do because, we've been married almost, at that time, it was 18 years. And so I was like, what am I going to do? Like, he's lied to me about all of this stuff because I had asked him, if the restaurant's ever in trouble, let me know so we can figure it out together. And that didn't happen. So, yeah, so then it was just a matter of trying to figure out what I was going to do. But then, so I kind of, what it forced me to realize or to face were like two of my biggest fears that I'd had, which was always like financial insecurity, and then also heartbreak, because I was just completely heartbroken
Yeah.
about everything. So, but because my body was in a state where, um, because I began practicing a healing technique, like ironically, not long before all of this happened. I had learned the technique and started practicing just a couple months before, actually. So, um, my body was in a place where rather than just like completely break down, like and get incredibly anxious, which I normally would when anything came up financially, and I just was like, I was just able to handle it so much better than if I hadn't been doing the work that I've been doing. Um, so yeah, so that's kind of why I wanted to come in and just share kind of the journey of what I went through. And so if other people are going through that, that to give them, some suggestions or like to know kind of like you're not the only one that's going through this and like um and like I said, because I looked at it more of like from an empowering perspective of like, okay, I have to become financially responsible for myself because he was always the breadwinner. So being in that position of like like can I stay? Can I go? Because like I don't have any money. Like I don't make hardly anything. I do have a part-time job, so but it's like okay, I have to reevaluate how I look at things and really use that as fuel to be able to figure out what to do next. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the one thing that I believe a lot of women find themselves in this kind of position when they're totally depending on their spouse
Hmm.
for everything. And I mean, it's not necessarily, like in your case. I mean, my oldest son, he's the breadwinner, and my daughter-in-law stays home with the six kids. So, like, but there are circumstances where it's like, oh my, like okay, what am I doing now? So,
Hmm.
yeah, it's you have
Yeah.
to look after yourself for sure.
Yeah. So in July that all of that happened. So over the course of the 2 years, so first it was like, okay, well, we're gonna figure out a way to make this work, right? I'm gonna step up, I'll help with the restaurant however I can. And it was kind of like, we'll, figure it out. Well, again, then I didn't realize the severity of the situation
Hmm.
because once again is, didn't tell me everything, you
Yeah.
know? So it was in July and then in September we had to shut the restaurant down. And again, I was just completely shocked because I was like, he had convinced me, oh yeah, we're gonna get it back on track and we're gonna be able to get all of our money back and everything. Well, no. So, and we're talking, this is not like a small amount of money. We're talking like over $600,000.
Ouch.
That was, yeah. I laugh and it's not funny. And at the time too, it was very much up and down, like lots of tears. And then there's also a lot of anger and resentment because, I thought we were partners, and yet you didn't
Yeah.
share this.
Yeah. It's
So,
yeah. Unfortunately, it's a lack of communication on his part, definitely,
mhm,
and it it must have felt like betrayal. I don't know how you felt, but it's like
mhm,
like why did you not talk to me about this? You know,
absolutely.
yeah. So unfortunately,
Yes, it was just felt absolutely really well together and everything. So we always, we were a really good team, and the fact that he didn't include me in that at all was also like over the course of the last couple of years, I've realized more and more like how much he'd taken me out of the equation and, not given me a choice in any of the decisions that he'd made. Um, yeah, so it was definitely a huge betrayal. And again though, because I was like, okay, well, we'll figure it out. We'll fight, like we'll do it. Well, then restaurant closed. So it's like, okay, back to square one. What are we gonna do? And then there's even more to the story. So along the time of doing that, because it really completely destroyed us financially, like we had to declare bankruptcy because just that he had put debt onto us from the restaurant. And so like there was no way we were going to be able to take care of it. Like it was just too much. So in the process of doing that though, you have to, have your tax returns. So I had to, and I had asked him, like we need to have tax returns. Well, we didn't have any copies of our tax returns. And we had an accountant that we were using. So I was like, well, give me the information. I'll try and contact him. And so he'd given me the information. He'd actually given it to me before I found out about the retirement account because we were trying to uh, get an equity line on our house, which we decided not to, thankfully. But and I got an email. The accountant was like, oh, okay, I'll do something. I'll send them back to you, whatever. And then we communicated a couple times via email, and then it was just like ghosted. There was nothing. And I was like, what the heck? So I would ask my husband, do you have a phone number? No, I don't have a phone number. How did he contact you? Oh, it was via email. It was just like one thing after another, this like thing. And it was like, okay, well, I was trying to track down those accountants so we could get our taxes, right? Our tax information.
Yeah.
Um, and like there was no record of this guy online, like no name. I'm Googling because I'm a bit of a sleuth. I like to like I'll figure it out. I want to figure it out. So I'm online, like looking through all the different like, trying to find this person, can't find him. And it's just like going on and on. And every time I'd ask my husband, it's like, well, he was recommended by somebody. And then like it was just like one thing after another of these things. And then eventually I started thinking, what if he just made the accountant up and there was never really accountant and he didn't file our taxes? And so I was started to suspect that that was the case. But of course, I have no proof. He's telling
Yeah.
me we did. So I was trying to figure that out. And it got to the point where actually I just flat out confronted him and asked him, I was like, I don't think there was an accountant. I think you just lied about it. And you didn't file taxes. And he assured me, no, no, there was. We had. I said, because my husband's also very good at not telling the complete truth you know so like you ask him a question and he gives you an answer and you feel like that's an answer but there's just enough vagueness around it or um it's not 100% complete truth and I know that about him how he dodges that. So that's why I was just very upfront. There was another person who filed our taxes, a separate person, and he said yes, and I was like, okay, then I'm going to keep digging trying to find this person. So I spent another probably 2 months. And at this point in time, I was going crazy, like just absolutely crazy because there was absolutely, it was so much gaslighting, honestly. That's what it was because there was absolutely no records. I mean, I'm digging through old emails, like going through, seeing if I can find any record of an accountant of taxes, even like finding an old tax return that had been filed and seeing whose name was on it as the filer and that didn't even have a name. There was no records of anything in any computer files on anywhere about accountants, about taxes, nothing. And I'm like, yet he's telling me this person exists and they did file the taxes. And so at that point in time, I really feel like you're going crazy because you're like, I'm quite sure of this, but yet you're telling me this. And so there was a couple of probably a couple more months, and I just kept looking and looking, trying to find something. At that about January, I think I realized I'm pretty confident there was no accountant. So, but how do I prove it?
Yeah.
So I had to keep digging. And then eventually I finally found proof that there was no accountant and he had made up the email address and responded back to me as the accountant. Um yeah, it went that far. And I was like, okay. And I had said once when I asked him flat out and he told me, and I believed him, I was like, if this is not the case, then that's it, we're done. Because that was the one thing that like I gave him chances, like, okay, money, okay, we'll figure it out. We'll work it out. Then we lose the restaurant. Okay, well, we're still this. And then the accountant thing, and it's like the whole time he's been like, yes, there's an accountant. Um, so now it's like, okay, I know that there wasn't, and he just made it up. So anyhow, so as of March of last year, we finally I finally confront he kind of I told him I know that there is no accountant and I know he lied about it. So we've technically been separated since March of last year
Hmm.
because it's just like you can't, how many times do you continue to trust somebody when they've lied?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been separated since March and kind of trying to figure out because he'd gone back to school for something, so he was in a program. So we're still living in the same house. He has a room in the basement because we've got two kids also, and so like financially it doesn't make sense to try and split apart right now. So we're still trying to figure out that part. But everything else that led up to it, it was kind of just like one thing after another. And yeah, somehow I just managed to, my mom, I would talk to her and she'd be like, God, I don't know how you're doing so well getting through all of this, And that's the only thing I can have to say is just um because of the work that I've done in the past and the work that I do, because that's what I do is I help people like help their bodies feel better and help the nervous system get more regulated, which I don't like the term regulated, but that's another conversation. um, but and so that work really helped me, I think, to stay in a mindset that didn't snowball, like so it didn't get too overwhelming of like just one thing after the other after the other after the other, and they're like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? So like with everything, I was just able to handle it so much more I want to say gracefully, like not that it wasn't easy, but just that I could handle it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So if you don't mind sharing, what modality or tools did you have prior? Like you said, you had started doing some work like a couple of months prior to everything beginning and snowballing. So do you
Hmm.
mind sharing what your tools were, modalities, or what you did?
Oh yeah. Not I love sharing. So the work that when I first started, it was network chiropractic. That was when I was back in college, which
Mhm.
a lot of people aren't familiar with it. It's a very different form of chiropractic, not the traditional. But it really does help your body kind of like release tension, stuff that's stored within your body. So I love it. And that's what I had continued on with over the years. And then in 2023, I went down a deep dive rabbit hole of trying to find ways to make money online. And just looking at all different things. And then just somehow this technique came up on my page and and it was not what I was looking for, but it was a healing technique called spinal flow. And I recognized it because of its similarity to network chiropractic. So and I was like, oh my gosh, like I could learn how to do this and I can help people.
Mhm.
Because the chiropractic, you have to be a chiropractor. So, and I didn't want to go back to school for that. So I was like, I was just very excited. So I just felt the need to learn this, even though it was quite an investment. And I normally have an incredibly difficult time making decisions on that kind of stuff. But I was just like, I just feel like I need to do this. I need to
Yeah.
learn this for some reason or another. So and of course my husband, that's the thing with him is, despite all the stuff that happened, is he's always been very supportive and a good guy for the most part.
Mhm.
So so I didn't have, so he was supportive of that. So he was like, okay, let's, do it. So I learned the technique and then got certified. And then in May of that year, when all that happened, that's when I just started seeing clients and stuff. I just created a space in our house for now, just to start and started seeing clients. So spinal flow was my base. And then since then, I've also learned other techniques as well. So I also learned Psych K, which is a very simple way to change subconscious beliefs because I find that also people, while you're working with their body and they have progress, a lot of times there's also a subconscious like thoughts programming that's running that's kind of keeping them from progressing sometimes, because those underlying beliefs. And so that's why I wanted to learn that one. And I've also gone on to do learn fascia work, which is also really helpful in the body and helping it feel more comfortable. And then over the last we're in May, so probably like 6 months or so, I've been creating a way to do kind of what I do online, so I can do it remotely. Because right now it's hands-on, but I really want
Mhm.
to be able to reach more people. So I created a way to be able to do that remotely as well. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, and what I love about what you're doing is, yes, you're looking after the body, which is important, but you're also, like you said, going with whatever's stuck emotionally, which is also critical. So,
Hmm.
it's not just because, as you know, we're, emotional beings. So rarely will it just work if you're just looking after the body without looking after other areas. I mean, I have said that many times in this I mean, in my life and in on this podcast here, is that we're not little compartments and everything is just separate. Everything
Hmm.
is connected. Everything is like it's like I said, the emotional, the spiritual, everything just we're just everything works together. So it is impossible most of the time anyway. I'm going to say 95% of the time to just look after the physical without digging a little
Hmm.
deeper and just going into, okay, what created that specific block, and and when
Hmm.
you have this ability to do that, that's, I mean, that's
Well, and
amazing.
that's kind of where it all comes from, is because
Hmm.
there's a full physiological process of emotions when you have an emotional response. And so there's a full process, but oftentimes in humans, it gets interrupted because we are in a place where you feel safe enough, or we get busy, and so we just don't have time to sit down and like let our bodies finish processing what we're feeling. So basically that's kind of where it all comes from, is it's all of that energy, that those everything that's released, and that it's not able to fully discharge, so which is what it's supposed to do. So it kind of gets stuck, and that's where a lot of the physical problems come from, is
Hmm.
from that stored energy and from emotions and stuff. So that's what the work, yeah, so that's why I love the work that I do, is because it's incredibly gentle. So because there's so many techniques out there, and I've tried a lot of different things, and I love so many different techniques, but it's very gentle in the sense that it doesn't make people like relive what they went through,
Hmm.
if it was traumatic. And it also, when they're doing it, it's not like they realize, oh, this is it, what I'm doing. It's kind of like allowing their body to begin to do it on its own.
Yeah.
And so and then of course, the more you do it, the deeper you can go and stuff. And I mean, it goes all the way where it starts changing like the way you think about things,
Hmm.
because you don't have those programmed responses, or those responses that are in your body and you're familiar with, that gives you that fight or flight response, so then it's just like you start thinking about things differently. So
Yeah,
so
no,
yeah,
absolutely.
it's definitely important to address both of those.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, and you're right. I mean, preaching to the choir as far as I'm concerned. I'm just totally into that. It's like when our nervous system is feeling safe, this is when healing can happen. I mean, I've written newsletters and articles about this, and
Hmm.
this is what I preach. And it's like, like look after your nervous system, and yes, emotional is it's part of it. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that so the that's kind of what this does, is it helps begin to help your body feel safe, is because, so
Hmm.
when people, I'm sure, and you're aware of this, I'm sure, when you're in like stressful situation, or repeated like over and over and over again, that becomes familiar to
Yeah.
your nervous system. So
Hmm.
in subconscious ways, people seek out the same things
Yes.
that at the same time they probably hate, because they're like, I hate feeling like this, I hate feeling this, but they're subconsciously finding ways that their body will feel that way because that's what's safe to the nervous system. That's what it knows.
It's their
So
normal.
exactly, it's their normal. And
Yeah.
so that's what, by starting the beginning to get the body to feel safe,
Hmm.
then it's like, okay. And the more you do it, the more that it starts to recognize, oh, okay, this is safety. Okay.
Yeah.
And to know that it can return there, to it
Yeah.
can be activated and return there, and activated and return there. So you're really building this flexibility of
Hmm.
the nervous system. So and then again, then you start getting rid of those programmed responses. Those come less and less. So it's like retraining it really.
Yeah.
And I know there are so many like they have all these devices and stuff out there, and I don't know, I feel like I see so many people that are they just like, I just want to feel like, how do I feel better? Like, give me the tips, the tricks.
Yeah.
And it's great that they have all these things and they're great tools. They're tools, but really the only way is to go back into the body
Hmm.
and to begin to recognize what's there and to work through that, because I mean, this like with a lot of other things, there aren't really shortcuts. I mean,
No.
there are tools that help, but
Hmm.
you still got to go through it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you said, and it's kind of a different wording, but for me, it's what I'll say is it's remembering our body,
Mm,
our instinct, our inner voice, just remembering the state that it is meant to be when it is in a safe spot, when it can relax. And it's just, yeah, it just remembering what it feels like instead of this whatever situation that is normal for us and that we're stuck in, just
mhm,
remembering what safety actually is and what it feels like. Because unfortunately, these things are, what we're referring to as normal here is things that were either learned or imposed on us by some trauma or something. So
mhm.
it's I mean, again, we're not born that way. It's just things that, like I said, are imposed or learned or whatever. So yeah, it's just.
And that's what I find too, and that I'm is that like as people start to do this, I really feel like people kind of come home to themselves
Mhm.
and who they are. Because again, all of this programming and all this stuff that we're taught from a young age, you need to be this, you need to be that, or like these criticisms people have of themselves, and which I hate when I see that, because people can be incredibly beautiful, beautiful souls, but yet
Yeah.
they're so hard on themselves. And it's like, why are you so hard? Like, I say that, but I know that because they've got all those
Yeah.
programmings. So this is like also kind of coming home to who they are, and like understanding that you don't have to fit into those molds that you were taught you needed to, or you were told you needed to, and that's
No.
okay, you know? Um, yeah, so that part I just love too. And that does take, I'm not gonna lie, that does take more time than just to start feeling better in the body and get it, because it takes a little bit more time once the nervous system, and you got to get the nervous system feeling safe
Yeah.
and getting out kind of what's stuck. And then with a bit more time, then it's kind of like you start noticing, oh, I don't get along with these people that I used to like so much anymore. Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like, you start recognizing those patterns that you used to choose. And but that's good, because it also means you're becoming more aware of who you are. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Your life can be totally different after, when you do the work like that. And then
Mm,
you look back like a year or 2 years later, and it's like, yeah, your life can be like, so some, as you said, some people that you used to hang out with don't really want to hang out with you anymore because you've changed and you're different. And it's like, well, you're not fun anymore, or you're not this anymore, so I don't want to hang out with you. But it's actually probably the best thing for you, because you don't need that energy around you anymore, because you are a different person.
hmm.
So yeah.
Yep. And
And
when
I've
people
seen
have
that.
Yeah, and when people have all of those, I want to say those fake or those, it's not necessarily fake, but like, I mean, like those more superficial, the superficial things, like as far as like superficial relationships,
Yeah.
or like it's not deep and like those things, I don't know, those things, it's like you don't resonate with that so much anymore,
Hmm.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you wake up one day and say, "Oh, I have a great life," or I'm a beautiful person, and you just,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like I said, your life can be totally different and just totally joyous. So
Yeah, I was gonna say you feel so much like when that start happening is you can feel things so much more intensely,
yes.
like you feel love, you feel joy, you feel all of these things like so intensely. It would just bring like tears to your eyes sometimes. You're just like, oh,
Yeah.
everything's so beautiful, the world's so beautiful because you just feel it more, and we're not numbed out,
Hmm.
which numbed out, but also part of the reason people don't feel so much is their kind of capacity because their bodies, they're like at capacity with all this stuff in there. So it gives more freedom for that feeling, for all those emotions.
Yeah. And as you said earlier, it's the transition sometimes often can be challenging and difficult because when you're used to being in that state of numbing yourself from feeling those feelings and those, everything, and you're going through the changes and starting to feel your emotions and not numbing them out, it can take a bit, but again, at the end of it, you're like,
Hmm.
wow, like your
Yeah.
emotions and everything doesn't get stuck anywhere, and you just sit there and you're able to feel it or feel those and let them pass through you instead of
Hmm.
bottling everything up. So yeah, it's very it can be very exhilarating for sure.
It is, and it's funny though, 'cause along the process too, sometimes like because you do feel things more and you're less likely to hold them in, you're more able to express what you feel, or like
Yeah.
you get, like you said, let it pass through, like let it move through you.
Hmm.
And sometimes I was like, there are periods of time where like you just feel like I'd feel like a leaky faucet.
Yeah. True.
Just like for no, there wasn't anything, like there's nothing I'm particularly upset about, nothing stressful going on, just nothing, but it's just because of those, like just that, like because emotions are just energy leaving the body is really all they are. So like, but for me they tend to come out in tears, so sometimes it just be like tears coming down and I'm like, I feel
Yeah.
like I'm just like a leaky faucet like all the time because like I just like letting everything move through me.
Yeah.
So, and
So
I will
when
say there are a couple of unexpected side effects of that. Is one is I swear your memory just begins to go, like short-term memory, because like sometimes I literally will forget what I'm saying in the middle of a sentence and be like, I totally forgot what I was going to say, and I think it's just because it's not that important sometimes,
yeah.
and you don't have that sense of urgency. So like I swear, like memory of things becomes, you're like, it just becomes harder. And I don't know, maybe that's not everybody, but I know for me, I swear that's one of the things. And then the other is also like, that all the stuff that happened with my husband, because like we get along well and everything like that. It's also hard to sometimes, like, I have to kind of go back and remind myself and think about everything because I'm not emotionally carrying it. So I'm not emotionally angry. I'm not resentful. I don't have any of that. So it's also hard because it's like I know all these things that he did and I don't want that to happen again.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it is like I don't carry that with me. So in that sense, it's almost like I have to like kind of remind myself of to the lengths he went to be deceptive, because
Hmm.
I don't want to repeat it. I'm not, but because the nervous system's so open and everything moves through, it also you're not holding it. So you don't hold a grudge. Like I don't hold a grudge. Like I don't, that's kind of weird actually. I have to say, like I'm always like, that's just like it just it's so different than like when most people go through something like that, and they have a lot of anger and resentment. And so I'm like, this is like weird that like I don't have that. So I have to like just remind myself of the situation,
Yeah.
so that's
But
kind of like a consequence, unexpected
it's beautiful though
consequence.
that you're not holding all this anger and
Hmm.
resentment and like wishing there, I don't know if you've ever heard that somewhere, but it just reminded me for 1 second here that when you're holding um, vengeful feelings and you're wishing ill will on someone else, it's like the state that you're putting yourself through is like
Hmm.
you're drinking poison hoping that it will kill them, and it's
Hmm.
like that doesn't make sense. So the
No.
fact that you're just feeling and just not holding on to anything is beautiful, but yes, as you said, you also have to be sure that you are protecting yourself so you're not falling back into that same that
Yeah,
pattern that you were into, because yeah.
exactly. So it's kind of like being smart, like logically, even though my emotions are like, they're like, oh, okay, what, everything's fine. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of that part's interesting to me because that was something that like and that's more recent, I would say, because like at the beginning, a lot of because there was so much that went on. So I would say over the last like even probably 8 months, maybe that's kind of like where I've started to notice that like, oh, I don't have those feelings, so any of the resentment, any of the anger anymore. It's just like gone. And so um, but again, I don't want to repeat, and considering um yeah, so it's being smart.
Yes. And boundaries and protecting yourself and self-care and loving yourself. So yes, it's
Yeah.
you have
And
to
at
do
the
what you
same
have
time
to do.
too, I also was like, self-care, like all the stuff that happened to him, I was like, okay, because that's what I do for people is like I help them. So I was like, okay, well, why did you do those? Like try and help him kind of uncover, I want to say his demons, but demons, his whatever subconscious programming he has that's
Yeah.
kind of kept him from doing that. So along this process also I was helping him to kind of like uncover some of this stuff. Um, so he can kind of become aware. You can't change somebody, and I know that.
Yeah.
So but like you can help somebody figure it out and make the
Hmm.
changes that they need to make if they want to make them. um
Hmm.
so which is also interesting too, because most people will be like, oh, I don't want to have anything to do with that person who just completely betrayed me, and I'm like, well, let's see, why did this happen to begin with?
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah.
Especially that you guys are living in the same house, so that's kind of a whole other, like dimension and just yeah.
Yeah, and that's honestly, it's not been, like I said, it's not that's what's it, because we get along really well. He's not, he's a good guy and all of that. So that part's easier, because like we don't really fight. I mean, every now and then we have disagreements about like how we handle the kids and stuff, um but so that part is not bad, which is I'm very
Hmm.
thankful for, because I know there's so many people out there who are not in that situation. And
Yeah.
and certainly if it was a different situation, I wouldn't be here. I would have gone somewhere else.
Yeah.
But that's, so it works out okay because we have the kids. And for me, it's always most important is taking care of making sure the kids, we don't disrupt their lives as much as possible, so
Hmm.
that they are as little as possible.
Yeah. No, it is important, and again, like you're looking after your children, but it seems to me and it feels to me that you've also set your own boundaries so
Hmm.
that you're also looking after yourself in the process and maybe helping him somehow. But like it's good that everyone is being looked after, including yourself. So, and you've got that one by the sounds of it, so that's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going okay right now. We're actually, he wanted to try couples counseling because I was like, been together, it'll be 20 years in July now. So, he
Mm,
wanted to try couples counseling. I'm like, okay, we can try it, like again, it's kind of like doing what we can, if to see if there's any
yeah.
relationship to save, or what our next steps would be,
Yeah.
because that's, the next thing, which is a whole nother, that's going to be a whole nother. See, for me, everything is also like, I look at it as, let's just, keep things how they are for now. And then, because I don't know that there'll be a future us. And I've told him that, he's aware of that, like,
Mhm.
but, and then, but once one of us decides, we want to either start seeing other people, or, a change needs to be made. That, like, maybe if I start making more money, and like, so I can either help pay for some of the bills, or, like, when there's a situation that can change, then we can like reevaluate and figure out what comes next.
Yeah.
But he's still in that mode of like, well, this isn't gonna work out, then we just need to call it quits, and we need to separate, we need to sell the house, and like, because he always has to have his own space, so he still gets triggered and has those responses to that
Mhm.
situation, where I'm like I don't. So I'm just like, why can't we just keep things the way they are for now, and then just work on the next step when it comes,
Yeah.
So we are still working through that part, and I honestly don't know. I don't know where it'll end up. So
Mhm.
yeah. Huh.
Who knows, right?
It's been a journey, though, I'll tell you. If anybody had told, when we got married, or if anybody had told me this, like, way back then, that this would be where we were at, I would have been like, no way. That would not happen.
Yeah.
So life is unexpected sometimes.
Well, we don't
So
get married thinking we're going to get divorced down the road. So
not most people anyhow. I suppose maybe somebody does, but I have
I don't
no
know.
clue. Most people, no. Most people, that's not their goal.
I would imagine
And
not. But yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so it's yeah, and again, and then, but honestly, then I will say that the therapy has been interesting, because we really realized that it really started to change when we moved, because we moved from California to Minnesota in 2014. My daughter was born in 2015, and it was kind of about the time we moved that things started to
Mhm.
change. And that's when he went from having a full-time job to being a freelance. And so there was a lot of added stress, because he was, even though he didn't say he was worried, even though I'd be the one that would be worried, he wouldn't be worried. But it was. And so it is interesting going through the process of therapy, and like talking with them, and realizing that all of these changes started before, you know
Mhm.
so that's something else, that if people, I highly recommend like couples therapy, if people start having disagreements, or like feel like something's changing in their relationship, even if you don't know what it is. Because if it had been addressed way back then, if we got started doing something then, it's like, I
Mhm.
don't know that we'd be in the same place now. It might have been completely different.
Yeah.
um, because he did carry a lot of stress about, how am I going to provide for my family?
Mhm.
And then he didn't want to stress me out, because I'm prone to anxiety, so he didn't want to stress me out about it.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't share if he was kind of worried, felt that pressure. So he felt pressure for years without saying anything, which isn't
Mhm.
really fair to him. Like, he should have, we're supposed to be a partner, you share that, right?
Yeah.
Like, we help each other out. We're always been very good at that. But if you don't share, then the other person doesn't know. So
Exactly.
so that's something too, that like, I will the the therapy is very interesting, going back and like realizing when things started to change, and why they were
Mhm.
changing, and
Mhm.
to that awareness of the situation. And that it's, I would think, if somebody started therapy, like, if when or sooner, like, if it would be really helpful, um as long as people are open to it, because I know not everybody's open to. Some people are, you can only do so much for people sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's also very helpful, I find.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's, as we say, hindsight, right? So,
Hmm.
yeah, you can say, well, we should have, but unfortunately, you never know.
I know exactly. And at the time, and that's the thing, is it's like, I would say it's kind of like a death by a thousand cuts, because it wasn't just like one little thing. It was like
Yeah.
a million different little things that happened over the course of that time,
Yeah.
that really kind of deteriorated things. And that at the time you don't realize it, because they're small. right? They're
Hmm.
so small, you don't even notice.
Yeah.
But then they just build up, and that's also super interesting because like I'm very aware, obviously, like I'm quite aware of stuff, right? But yet
Hmm.
I didn't because they're so small and it happens so subtly, you don't necessarily aren't aware that it's happening
Yeah.
as those changes occur. So yeah, so that's really interesting to look back on too. And
Yeah.
like,
And
oh,
these,
like
like you said,
how
these little things, they accumulate, and they
right.
may, they are small little emotional triggers, but they still accumulate, and over a period of 10 years, it's not this little thing, it's
Mhm.
gotten quite big. So yeah.
Yeah. And how easy it is, how easy it is for that to happen,
Absolutely.
without because it's not a big thing. There was no big things, you
Yeah.
know. It was just daily life with kids,
Yeah.
and trying to survive, keep them alive, keep you alive, and that is just so it just was so subtle and how easy those little things slip in there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. So communication is so important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Communication, and in any type of relationship, whether it's
Hmm.
intimate or business or, parent, child, or whatever, communication, yeah, is crucial for sure. Um,
Yeah.
any last words of wisdom?
Uh not well, just take care. Like the more people are aware of themselves and what they are feeling, more you're aware of what yourself and what you're feeling, the better. Because then you could start to understand like what's going on, like where what you need to do, because emotions are just communicating to us something, like we have a
Mhm.
belief that isn't true for us, or you know there's always a reason for an emotion. So the more people are aware of what they're feeling is the better that they can understand themselves, I feel like. um and if anybody does have difficult, any little things in relationships, couples, like going to couples counseling, you're being very open to talk about it,
Mhm.
even if it's uncomfortable, all of the uncomfortable things. That's I always thought very open about talking about everything. So, so that's why it was kind of surprising that that wasn't the case for him. So,
Yeah.
but that it does help to keep things from progressing, into a way you don't want.
Yeah,
So.
for sure. For sure. Well, I greatly appreciate you taking the time today to come and chat with me, and yeah, so grateful
Yeah,
you
thank
were
you so
here.
much. Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Diane. That was wonderful.
Thank you for spending time with us inside the Heartful Healing Hub. If this story moved you, please consider sharing this episode or leaving a comment. Your words help others find this sacred space. If you or someone you love has a healing journey to share, we'd love to hear from you. And finally, if you would enjoy a gentle way to unwind after listening, visit the show notes to download your free tea ritual guide, Sip and Soften, a soul soothing gift to nourish your inner healer. Until next time, be kind to yourself and trust what has always been within you. And remember, you are whole, you are healing, you are home.